Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Birds of a Feather with your host, Alan Bondar, and currently co-host, Elliot Christofferson. Great to have you with us again, my friend. Dustin is doing great. He's got some great things going on with his business, so he's going to be MIA for a little bit. Who knows how long? So Elliot and I are going to be running the show for a bit, and who knows? Could be forever. We just never know. But he's doing a great job. Things are going real good in his life. So we miss him tremendously, but that's all right. I'm glad to have Elliot. I also enjoy very much talking with Elliot. He's got a lot of great things to say. Last week you had a chance to share your testimony, Elliot, or not testimony, but a little bit about your background. And hopefully you all enjoyed that episode. We went an hour. Today we're going to try to limit it to the 30 minutes as we usually try to promise.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. Well, you know what we'll do? Dustin and I used to do that all the time. I would just cut it off and he'd look at the clock and be like, geez, man, are you serious? And that's just the way it is. So we'll always pick up where we left off if we remember. But this week we're going to talk about faith. But before we do, actually, Elliot, at the end of last episode or near it, you had said that there was 4 things or whatever you wanted to bring back again to start this episode. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I wanted to address going off of like my personal testimony and my experience, leaving Christianity and becoming an atheist. I wanted to address the 4 common responses that I get from a Christian after I tell them my story, and I've found that it's almost always one of these 4, and they always attack. I wouldn't not necessarily attack, but they question. They put the burden on me rather than on the evidence and the arguments, which is kind of a defense mechanism. It's very frustrating, very irritating, because I would like to talk about evidence and arguments and the reasons why I stopped being a Christian, rather than try to defend my experience or my character or my mental health in some weird way. So, and maybe you can tell me if you have. I mean, you no doubt have gotten some of these 4, but I want to see if you have any to add, and which one of these 4 you might have seen the most often.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead and start.
Yep.
Probably the most, well, not maybe the most common that ex-Christians get, but it's in the top 10 is you just want to sin. Or I'll just name them off, and then we can go through them one by one. And number 2 is this is number 1 for me, is you were never a true Christian. 3 is God didn't give you what you wanted, so you're essentially mad at him.
Right.
And the last one, kind of a fallback at the end, when you give arguments and evidence and they don't know how to answer them, and they sound too logical. They'll say, well, you're suffering from satanic deception, or the devil has tricked you, implying that you might still be a true Christian, you might still be saved, but you're in rebellion because the devil has put these seeds of doubt in your mind, and you've let them get control. So out of those 4, have you heard all 4 of those?
Yeah, I've gotten all 4 of those. I've got all 4 of those, quite a bit, actually. I'm not sure that I can think of anything that would not fall into one of those categories, honestly. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good summary.
If you talk to Christians long enough, like you're going to start to do your own polling and make a list, and it's always the same crap.
Yeah, no, it is. Well, why don't we address them then?
One
at a time, and if we get to
they're
faith,
very easy to address.
Yeah, let's address them. And look, faith could be the carrot on a stick that we keep everybody coming back for. We eventually talk.
Oh, we don't have to talk about these 4 for
no,
30
I want
minutes.
to. This is great.
Okay.
This is great. We'll just see where it goes. I mean, that's what I love this show for this reason. I mean, let's talk about this. But we will eventually get to faith, which is really fun. But that's okay. No rush. We got forever. I mean,
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
What else are we doing? I mean, we're certainly not out, killing people and eating babies. So we got all the time in the world.
Not yet, right? I still have all day.
Yes, that's right. That's right. All right. Well, let's talk about the first one. You just want to sin. That is such a very. It's a comment that comes from, in my opinion, I think it comes from a place of, I wish I could live like that, because I always dream of wanting to do these things I'm not allowed to do as a Christian. So clearly, the only reason you left Christianity is so you could go do them. If they don't actually have any cravings to do anything that's evil out in the world, the simple things the Bible says are simple, then I guess the question would be, why is that even crossing their mind? Like, if these things aren't so enticing, if they're not something that look attractive to you, then why would you think they look attractive to me? What is it about these things you think I'm chasing if you don't think they're so wonderful? If they're as abhorrent as you claim they are as a Christian, then why would you think I'm looking out I'm desiring them? They're abhorrent, right? So that's a strange comment, first off, for that reason, in my opinion. You want to touch on that?
Well, first of all, they have to assume that there is some kind of sin that you're pursuing or that you want to engage in. And they don't know what that is 9 times out of 10. And they can make assumptions and they can try to judge from the life that you're living, but they have no idea. It's just this, oh, you just want to sin. So you turn your back on God. And I have two responses to that. The first one is, what kind of sin do you not engage in as a Christian that you would as an ex-Christian? Because I would bet all my money on the fact that Christians are doing whatever the heck they want to do anyway in their private lives. And if they think it's a sin, then they just either ask God for forgiveness or they justify it somehow as not being a sin, or, oh, this was an exception. So they're doing exactly what they want to do, whether they're a Christian or whether they're not. It makes no difference.
Right.
And
well, and let me just touch on that before you go on. That is a fascinating comment, because what it triggered in me is the thought that, depending on which Christian you ask, they will have different opinions on whether or not a certain thing is a sin. So I know some friends of mine who are still Christians, even, that would say living with your girlfriend is not a sin, or looking at pornography is not a sin. They would say those are not sins. You can't find them in the Bible. They would argue that that's not a sin. You ask another Christian, and oh my goodness, that's one of the worst sins you can possibly do, right? Either one of those, they're like of the devil. So that's also a very fascinating thing, because you're accusing an atheist of wanting to go do these sins when your Christian brothers and sisters are also doing these things you call sin. So what makes me unique just because I'm an atheist? That doesn't make me want to go do that. I could have done that as a Christian and just justified it. But that was just to your point. But keep going what you were going to say.
The more obvious response or argument against this, and this goes for the one that says God didn't give you what you wanted, so you're mad at God. Okay. So if I just want to sin and that's why I'm leaving Christianity, or I'm mad at God because he didn't give me what I wanted and that's why I'm leaving Christianity, those both imply that I still believe God is real and that the Bible is true, because I didn't leave because of the evidence or the arguments or the fact that I don't believe it's true anymore. I left for a different reason, completely unrelated to that. So if I still believe that there's a God, and more specifically that there is an eternal hell, who in their right mind would ever risk going to hell just for some sins, or going to hell because they're mad at God? If you truly believe that there are consequences, that God is real, there will be a judgment, and there is an eternal hell, no one for any reason is going to turn their back on God and choose to become an atheist, or are going to use that as the reason to stop believing. That is insane. That's like, I just don't have any other way to put it. You're going to go to hell for some sins. You're going to go to hell because you're angry at God, or you didn't get what you wanted.
Right.
Give me a break.
Right.
It's not rational.
No, that's not rational. It's definitely not rational.
I would sacrifice everything in my life to either not go to hell or to go to heaven. It's not even a question.
If any Christian actually believed in the stuff that they say they believe in, they would be sacrificing a lot more than they do.
Right. Which is a whole nother conversation.
It's a whole nother conversation, right? I mean, when you look at the way the Bible describes how the apostles were suffering and the first century saints were going persecution because they were so passionate for Jesus, where do you see that going on? At least in this country, I don't. know it's like in the other countries. Maybe they are. I hear stories, about how they're all dying for their Christianity, but here it's about one of the most comfortable like lifestyles you can have as a
Right.
Christian, which is very odd, considering you should be, suffering or at least giving things up, sacrificing far more for the glory of God so that you could live with him forever.
Right.
But anyway, to the point of indulging in sin as thing, the other thing about that is, obviously once you're an atheist, you recognize sin is not even a thing. That's just a concocted idea. It's made up for the purpose of religion to be, keep people bound, afraid of offending God. Because sin is just something you do that, that makes you fall short of his glory. The exact definition taken right out of Romans 3, Romans 3:23, right? For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Literally sinned is, comes from that Greek word, that hamartia, which means to miss the mark. For all have missed the mark and fell short of the glory of God. So that's literally the meaning of that verse. So whenever you miss the mark, whenever you don't do exactly what God says, that's sin. So, I mean, Christians are sinning every day. I mean, it's impossible not to. You just basically miss the mark constantly because you can never, stand up to his holiness and be good enough. That's why the Christian message is about Jesus and whatnot, because it, saves the day. So Christianity, is the only religion that I know of that that actually resolves the sin problem. But once you realize there's no sin problem, you really don't have a need for a savior. So that kind of obliterates the whole thing. So you leave Christianity, you realize there's no sin problem, that things aren't sin. The way I choose to live my life has nothing to do with being afraid to offend a holy God, or trying to do things that, just because I'm no longer offending this holy God, I'm going to go out and, do the worst thing I can. Let's face it, I didn't want to do the worst thing I could as a human, even when I was afraid of God, or when I was a Christian, when I did believe it was a sin. There was nothing. It wasn't because of fear of hell. There was nothing motivating me to go kill somebody. I just
Right.
don't have that desire. I never did. I mean, as angry as I may have been, never once did it cross my mind, even as a Christian. I'm not even one of these people that had these imaginations that were like, boy, I wish I could kill my boss. I just personally never felt that way. I didn't have that kind of personality. So I
Right.
also don't have that personality outside of Christianity. So sin or no sin, I have no desire to go do these horrible, evil acts. They're just not a part of my nature. I had good parents. I had a good culture, a good environment I was raised in, and good friends. I surround myself with a good family. I mean, a good workplace. I mean, all these things structure who I am as a person. So I don't have anything about any desires within me to go out and like live this infinitely pleasurable lifestyle or something, some evil thing. I don't know. I find it very pleasurable to just live this good life and the best that I can, and enjoy the fruits of what I produce in this world. So I don't know. Maybe we're beating a dead horse now, but that's pretty much all we can say about the sin thing.
Well, I can say one more thing.
All right.
Atheists famously say, "I rape and murder and pillage as much as I want to," which is
Right.
zero. And I'll throw the Christians a bone for a second. I'll say, yeah, since becoming an atheist and realizing that there is no God, I have absolutely thought of how there are no boundaries ultimately, and that I could, in theory, do some things that I might want to do, like harming other people in some secret way. But those are fantasies that everybody's going to have, I think, time to time. Maybe you're an exception, maybe you're not, but the reasons that you don't do those things, the reasons I don't do those things, even with no God, is the same reason that Christians don't do those things, even with a God. And the primary reason is consequences. There are consequences in the real world that put the guardrails back on you. We do not live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where we can carry out these primal urges of murder and mayhem and pillaging. We have consequences. We also have a very, very deep and long human history of trying very hard to understand what is the moral thing to do. And I mean, there's an entire field called ethics. You can study it. Like, there are far greater, better reasons to not engage in these behaviors, even if you want to, and even if there is no God.
I agree. So the consequence is one, and then another far better. Again, I'm a hedonist. I was a Christian hedonist when I was a Christian. I've just now abandoned that. The pursuit of pleasure has to do with God. I still think the pursuit of pleasure has to do with living the best life you can, and that involves doing what's best for humanity, because that obviously is best for me. So there's so many good reasons to follow a moral code. But you touched on morality, and here's an interesting thought, and I'll end this section with it unless you have something else to add. But it goes to show that if the only reason a Christian is choosing not to go out and live it up in sin is because they're bound to submitting to this God because they're afraid of going to hell, or offending him, or not being happy in him, or whatever their reasons are. But it has to do with some sort of a standard that they're just submitting to and obeying. They're not really being moral agents. They're just being obedient people. They're just submitting to a dictator, not choosing to live good lives and moral lives because of the agency within themselves that says, I want to be a good person. They're not a good person if they think that you have to be obedient to God to be a good person. So when I become an atheist, I'm not submitting to God's rules. I'm submitting to my own, and I'm still a better person than a lot of Christians I know. So it's like, it's an odd accusation when Christians say that we're just wanting to go live in sin, when in fact, if that's what you're accusing us of, what is the reason why you are not? If it's not your own choice of morality, then where's your morality come from? It doesn't. You're just literally submitting to a dictator. That's not moral agency at all.
Right.
So anyway, so that's that one. Second one was,
so this is number one for me. You were never a true Christian. Now I get this so often. This is a big one. I think a lot of people are getting this from Christian apologetics. I know that Ray Comfort has famously used this when he talks to ex-Christians, and they really think they've got something here, because this is essentially a theological argument. For example, I'll be told that I got the wrong method of salvation, or I misinterpreted the gospel, or I grew up in the wrong denomination. It's always going to be something that I believed in error, and because of that, it led me all the way out or to atheism, or I stopped believing because I didn't understand, and I need to go back and I need to re-understand the gospel the correct way, and it's always their way.
mm-hmm.
So I could talk to 12 different Christians. They could give me this apologetic about how I wasn't a true Christian in the first place, and then I would get 12 ways to
Elliot,
get saved.
Elliot, rewind
and
about.
I'm like,
Elliot, Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Test 1 2.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you. I think we're back on track.
Okay.
Can you rewind 30 seconds and
sure? Yeah, I had an incoming call, and it screwed it all up.
That's what it was. Okay, got it. Yep.
Okay, so I can talk to 12 different Christians who are all going to give me this response: this, you're never a true Christian. And then when they tell me I misunderstood the gospel, and I ask them, okay, what's the real gospel? What did I misunderstand? Well, first of all, they can't tell me what I misunderstood, because they didn't live my life. They have no idea. So this is an assumption like the last one. But when I ask them that, they will give me 12 different gospels, essentially, because each individual is going to have just a little bit different, or by picking 12 random Christians, I got 12 different denominations. And so this doesn't work in the real world. If there is one gospel and one way to get saved, then we've got a lot more Christians out there who genuinely believe that they're heading to heaven, and that they put their trust in Jesus as their savior, and they have got it wrong, because they all have a slightly different variation on that. So until I can, I don't know, take a poll or interview every Christian in the world to get some kind of consensus on how exactly I'm supposed to get saved, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can tell them what I believed, and so I believe that And they're also gonna tell me that, well, it's not that complicated. It's just about Jesus. Okay, I believed genuinely, and you can't convince them of this because they don't care. They don't want you to have been a genuine believer. But you can tell them, I genuinely believe with all my heart that Jesus Christ was the perfect sacrifice for my sin. He died on the cross and rose again. And all I have to do is believe in my heart and confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord and that this was true, and maybe repent of my sins as well, and I'm saved. Now, what else am I supposed to add to that? Okay, maybe, oh, you didn't get baptized. Baptism is part of the process of being saved. Okay, great. I got baptized. Maybe it was, oh, you didn't repent first, or maybe it was a false conversion because the Holy Spirit never chose you as the elect and never changed your heart before you came to Jesus. Whatever the little technicality is, there's nothing I can do. I can't convince. It's extremely personal, and it frustrates me because I gave everything to this. I lived on faith as much as I possibly could. I did nothing wrong, and to put the blame on me, it really makes me angry.
Yeah, no, I
I
understand.
genuinely believed, and now I genuinely do not believe.
Right. No, understandably so. And I'm in the exact same boat. And frankly, if you think about it, um, number one, you have this problem with so many different explanations of how a person must be a Christian. And the irony is, many of the ones that you'll talk to, they'll say, well, you have to believe in my way. If you ask them, well, what about the Christians over there that believe that way? Are they saved? Well, no, they have to believe this way, right? So they're even going to condemn their Christian, brothers and sisters, so to speak, and say, well, they're also not Christians because they don't believe this way. And it becomes extremely frustrating in that regard too, because it's like, okay, so not only did I have to be a Christian, but I had to be a Christian your way, and I had to be lucky enough to find your way while I was a Christian in order to stay saved, because that was the only Christianity that you're saying was right. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
But having to think that no matter how hard you search, there is in Jeremiah, you will find him if you seek for him with all your heart. And I think God himself speaking, say, you will find me if you seek me with all your heart, right? Forget the exact verse. But I did. I mean, I sought him. Like, I really did. I was passionate. And people will say, well, that's because you were too theological. What do you mean too theological? How do you find an invisible God unless you're studying his word and trying to understand him? You can't touch him, feel him, see him. So how else are you supposed to know him? I mean, I'm not getting these personal visitations in the night. He's not coming to me in burning bushes. Maybe he is to you, but he's not to me. And so the best chance I had was to study his word and get to know him and try my best to find him and seek him with all my heart in that way, to love others, because that was the command of scripture. Maybe if I loved more, I would find God more. And that's what I did. And at the end of the day, this God did not see any of my efforts to know him and to seek him sufficient enough. And no matter how much faith I had, without any evidence whatsoever, because you can't see him, you can't touch him, you can't feel him. Well, some would say you can feel him. I thought I could feel him. So, we'll just say you can feel him or whatever. But that's, obviously I don't believe that's what you were actually feeling. But regardless, you can feel him, whatever. So you're chasing him, you're loving him. And he just says, yeah, not you. And decides to blind you from the truth anymore. The truth. Yeah. You're no longer able to believe in God because God has chosen that you're not going to. Now, some would say, well, no, you have free will and all that garbage. Listen, that becomes a stupid statement, because if God is sovereign and in control of everything, obviously he knew when he created this world that Alan Bondar would be an atheist. He could have created a million different worlds, but he chose one where Alan Bondar and Elliot Christopherson became atheists. Why? Why create that world? Why not create one where I found the right answer and I was able to land on this guy's pocket of truth so I could stay a Christian? It is ridiculous that we have to somehow dance around until we find the right answer that gives us the revelation of God. God knows what I need to believe. He knows what
Right.
you need to believe. So why isn't he revealing to us what it is we need in order to believe?
Yeah. And you mentioned free will, and while I'd like to get into that, I think that warrants an entire like
Sure.
few hours discussion. Whenever I run into this, you were never a true Christian. I'll entertain it for a couple of minutes, but that's one of the rules that I kind of loosely follow. Is if somebody wants to attack me and my personal experience and question, if I was genuine or real, or question my beliefs from my past, like I'm just not going to talk to you anymore at that. It's not a good faith conversation. They're not open to discussing the evidence or the arguments. Their defense mechanisms have been activated, and they just want to accuse me of things. And like at that point, I'm pretty much done. Like I know what I went through. It was real. I don't have to. I can't prove it to anyone. That's the problem with personal experience. Everybody's got an experience. You either have a faith experience, whether it's Christianity or a different religion, or you've had an experience as an ex-Christian coming out of it. Like everybody's got an experience, and people want to talk about how, oh well, I know it was real. God changed my life. I'm like, okay, there's always somebody else's experience that cancels yours out. Talking about personal experience doesn't do us any good. Nobody can prove anything. It was a first person situation. We have to put that to the side and discuss the evidence and the arguments. If you can't do that, then go off and have your personal experience with Jesus being your best friend. That relationship you swear you've had for 20 years and you talk
Right.
to him every day, blah, blah, blah. Fine, go and live that life.
Right.
I can't discuss it with you because there's nothing I can say that's going to invalidate your personal experience. There's nothing that you can say that is going to change mine and the way I feel about it.
Right.
So it's a worthless conversation.
So, we are going to have to do a long conversation on free will for sure. But one of the things that is very irritating, and you just touched on it. So we want to discuss the evidence. We're like, okay, let's look at the evidence. If there is evidence for God's existence, of course I'll believe because I'll become convinced that he exists. And then I'd have the whole other thing is, do I think he's worthy to submit to and all this? And that, goes down a whole trail. But at the very least, if we can look at evidence and you can demonstrate without a shadow of a doubt that God exists, great. You'll have my conviction. I will believe God exists. But what I usually get is, well, you have to take it on faith. You have to have faith that God exists at the end of the day, because all we have is evidence consistent with the proposition that God exists, but nothing substantiating the fact of his existence. Just, well, yeah, but all these things point to it. Well, that's not good enough. They also point to an eternal universe. That doesn't help us any. They also point to, the spaghetti monster in the sky. So that none of that's helpful. I need something substantial. And the answer is, well, you just have to have faith. Okay, so here's my problem. You say it's free will, and that's the reason that I'm not a believer, because I am free will and I'm rejecting God. Except I'm not. I'm seeking evidence. So how is that rejection? You're telling me to take something on faith that I'm not convinced of. So how do I conjure up a conviction of something I genuinely have no evidence for? And if it's going to require this thing called faith that has to be granted to me, that I have to be able to believe because the faith itself is the evidence somehow, then that's going to take a work of God to change me and make me believe. And since he's not doing that, how is that my fault? And if that's not my fault, then how can this God be just in judging me and sending me to eternal punishment for something I had no control over?
Right. And that actually leads us right into our last one, which is the devil tricked you. You're under satanic deception. Not our fault.
Right.
How are we supposed to resist a supernatural being that has us under a delusion? Now, I know they're going to say, well, then the problem is with you. You weren't using the armor of God to ward off satanic attacks correctly.
So it's like, oh, you have one chance. So you're a Christian. God gave you this chance. And because you didn't resist and you didn't do all the right things, you lost your salvation, and too late for you. Is that how it works?
And it becomes a theological discussion, because I know that the verse they're going to use is that something about in the end times God will send great delusion, that they'll believe a lie.
Second Peter.
Yeah, well, I guess that means I'm not elect for anybody who believes in election. So there's nothing that I can do. But the thing about invoking the devil is for that to be a legitimate argument that I'm going to listen to and actually consider, well, first I have to believe that the devil is real. And if I don't believe the devil is real, then you're wasting your time telling me that the devil has got me under his control because, I don't care. I believe he's just as fictional as Santa Claus or God.
Right. And I didn't believe the devil was real before I left Christianity because I just found no evidence for it in the Bible.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, the Hebrew word Satan, I think it's pronounced Satan, not actually Satan.
Okay, yeah.
Most of the time that's found in the Old Testament, that simply means adversary, translated correctly. It's not a proper noun.
Right, adversary or opponent, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many opponents. In fact, even in the Old Testament, God himself is called Satan when he faces against Balaam with the angel, right? So, I mean,
I think
when he asks for a census, he's called adversary. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember that. Before we get off track anymore, I just want to mention that the reason why American Christianity invokes the devil so often, like this spiritual war, I see in Christian nationalism these days, I see this spiritual warfare narrative all the time. I mean, even like Tucker Carlson's been promoting this to millions of followers, that we're locked in a spiritual warfare. The reason why the devil is so important to American Christianity is that we have, I think it was the Apocalypse of Peter, but worse than that, further on we had Dante's Inferno, and those two books, without those two, just with the Bible, it'd be very difficult to build an entire doctrine about the devil or to know much about the devil at all. But when we added those two culturally in the early church and into the Middle Ages, the devil became this figure that Christians were using extra biblical sources for, and creating all kinds of stories and supernatural powers and spiritual warfare. And what made it worse for America is we had Europeans flooding over in the early stages who were extremely religious. They were coming to a totally new land, very foreboding and unknown. They're coming to the wilderness essentially, and they're coming to a place where there was this native population that was so different than them. Whether it was, I mean, you name it, they were like a foreign alien race essentially. If you were a white pilgrim from Europe, and they were involved in all kinds of esoteric religious practices. So suddenly the devil hiding behind every tree in the wilderness became a real threat to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like far more real to them in that context than it was back in Europe. And that formed the foundation for early American culture. It really got its tentacles into that, and this idea of the devil and encountering demons in a new foreign land was a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and then you got it today. Obviously we built upon that heavily, and now it's just so deep into society. But it's not a real thing. If you remove the fictional aspects and you just use the Bible, good luck coming up with this doctrine of the devil that looks anywhere close to what people claim that he is.
Right. So there was one view, and I can't remember how, for some reason my mind is just not thinking of the guy's name, and it's bothering me. Anyway, he influenced me a lot, actually, and he wasn't even a full preterist, but at the time he influenced me as regarding his view of the gods, based on Psalm 82, where God has a council of gods that, and so he refers to "let us make man in our image." He's referring to a whole council of gods, of course, him being the supreme one or whatever. So at some point, you have one of these gods that rebels against, all of them end up rebelling in some way, or most of them anyway. And so God's going and judging the nations because all the nations have their own God, and these gods are real. And so one of them, is the enemy of Israel. and one or the one that Israel kept falling, temptation for. So, you do have that kind of thing going on. At least I was starting to fall into that camp and made a lot of sense. But even as a full preterist, that was just part of the backstory. But it was over. Like that, all those gods have been obliterated and destroyed, and the enemies of God are cast into the lake of fire. So it wouldn't matter anyway. So yeah, I don't even think there's a God that or a Satan that existed, in our time today, even if I held that view. So so the Satan thing, that's also silly. I don't know we're out of time, but we did have one more. That was the third one that we skipped over. What was that one?
We skipped over God didn't give you what you wanted, and I think I kind of skipped it because the same thing applies to the you just want to sin. And my retort to that was nobody's going to go to hell, choose to go to hell, and turn their back on God just because God didn't give you what you wanted. It makes no logical sense. It's not
Right.
even worthy of consideration. But I think one important part might be that when you really, really, really need something, and it's like in that moment, it's life and death for you, and you beg God for an answer. You put all your faith on the line, and you to the point where He's going to give you what you need, and you don't get that answer, and you don't get it in time. That absolutely should shake your faith to the core, because there are verses in the New Testament. I can't name them off. I'm even Google them in 1 second, but verses about God answering prayer and giving you the desires of your heart, or always giving you what you want. Of course, that seems unrealistic to Christians, so they've tried to walk those verses back as to meaning something else, because obviously when you ask God for something, something in the real world that you really want, you almost never get it unless it's something that was going to happen anyway, or something that didn't need a supernatural intervention. But when you really, really need something and you're desperate and you beg God for it, and you put all your faith on it, and in your heart that He's going to come through for you. Haven't we seen examples of that throughout the entire Bible, where if someone knows they have enough faith where they know God is going to come through, kind of like Elijah calling down fire from heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't God make good on that?
Yep.
I mean, you can test prayer pretty easily.
Sure. Well, that's why they walk it back. And at my conclusion on prayer also as a Christian, because I saw all these things and I was like, well, I guess prayer is just communication with God. That's all it amounts to now. It's just me talking to God, and I throw ideas up there, almost like throwing it out at a genie and hoping that maybe He'll say yes. But sometimes He says no, and sometimes He says maybe, and we just accept any one of those answers because it's not about God giving us everything we want. It's about us talking to God.
Yeah.
So you basically annihilate all the teaching of prayer in the Bible and just make it whatever fits the system. Because everything you said describes what prayer is in the Bible. But since that doesn't actually work in real life, we redefine it and say, well, prayer is just talking to God.
Yeah. And this did happen to me when I was a Christian living on faith. I did need an answer from God, and I did beg God for an answer. And I knew in my heart that He was going to come through, and He did not. And that didn't shake my faith. So this is definitely not the reason I'm not a Christian. At the time, it did not shake my faith, but I was left in utter despair, not knowing why God did not answer me. And it wasn't until a few months after that I decided that because I didn't know what had happened, that I was just going to wait for God to come to me, and in any possible form imaginable. It did not matter to me how, just in some way, God letting me know that He was still there. I wasn't asking for anything except the assurance that He was still there and He still cared about me. And I waited for a full year, and not a single thing happened. And I had to be confronted with this dilemma. I believe I did everything right. And if that's the case, and God never appears in any discernible way, no matter how long I wait, no matter where I look, that I have a dilemma that either God does not care about me, or God is not there and I'm talking to the air. And this is something that every Christian can test for themselves. I know they're going to retort with, well, the Bible says, thou shalt not test the Lord thy God. Maybe they should reconsider that and actually think about why it says that and what the context was about with that verse. Because there are plenty of people throughout the Bible that tested God.
Yep.
But you gotta be really honest with yourself. Either God cares about you and He's going to make that known in your life in some way, even if you're going through struggles, or you're in really, really rough times. God. My grace is sufficient. Now He's going to let you know in some way that you just got to keep trusting Him, or He's not. And you got to decide for yourself. You got to be really honest. Either God doesn't care about you, or He's not real. Now, neither one of those are a good conclusion, but it's an honest conclusion.
It is.
What am I supposed to do? Like, answer me that. So I've done everything.
Right. No, exactly. And as a Christian, you will say, well, you can't prove God exists. You know, you can't even really know with 100% certainty. You just have to have it on faith, and there's no way of proving it even to yourself. You have experiences and you define them as God, and so you take anything you can and you just make it about God. So that's the way you kind of live your life, kind of like a hope that what you're believing is true. But when asked if you know this God personally, you say, yes, I know him personally. And it's such an odd thing because it's like, if I know anybody personally, I damn well better be sure that I can prove them to you. Like, I don't need to be saying to you, I know somebody personally. And then when you ask them to prove they exist, me be like, well, you just have to take it on faith. I know Ray, my partner, personally. I can bring her in the room. I could show her to you. You could actually see her, right? Not right now, you can't because she's at work, but I could show you anytime, you know, that she's not at work, you know, whatever. I can prove anybody that I claim exists and that I have a personal relationship with. To say you have a personal relationship with God and then say, well, I can't know for sure that he exists, or I can't prove him to you. That is the weirdest comment ever, because how can you not know for certain, and how can you not prove something that you say you know personally? That's a conundrum. And you have to ask yourself, why is it you think you have this personal relationship with this God? Could it be that it's something other than what's really happening? Maybe you've been brainwashed into believing that you have a relationship when it's not actually real. So right. I just want to conclude on that subject of the third point that you mentioned earlier, that one of the conclusions is that you must be angry with God then because you didn't get what you wanted. That's a big one I get a lot. You're just angry with God. And people have read my book and they say, oh, you're angry with God. I keep telling them, I'm like, I don't know, like, I can't seem to help them realize that it's not about being angry with God. Yes, I'm angry that over 40 years of my life were wasted in a cult. Yes, that's extremely frustrating. And I'm angry when I talk to people and they say ridiculous things and asinine things, and they try to backpedal all the time, and they can never stay on a topic because they have no evidence to talk about it. So it's just ping ponging everywhere. Or when they say one of these four things to me, and I'm just like, yes, these things irritate me tremendously because you're just making accusations and assertions all left and right that you can't defend or prove or whatever. So yeah, the irritation is going to come through, but I'm not angry at God. I'm irritated with the system. I'm irritated with what I'm facing. Yeah. I'm irritated with talking to people that are making no sense and still believing something when they know full well they have no grounds to hold to it. So yeah, but you know, if you keep accusing me of being angry at God, then I'm going to be even more angry with you because that's just frustrating. I don't even believe a God exists. How can I be angry with him?
Yeah, I devoted a chapter about this chapter in my book to this very subject called "You're Just Mad at God," and I gave my reasons why it doesn't work and what I'm really angry at. Because you can't be angry at an all powerful being, knowing that he's going to judge you for that. It makes no logical sense. It's like actively going out on the street and taunting a serial killer, knowing that you're going to go to bed with your doors unlocked. Like, nobody does something like that, especially an all-powerful God who can strike you dead at any time or send you to hell. Like, yeah, I'm really gonna, make public professions about how I hate him so much. Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, do you, before we log off, can you think of a fifth response that you get from Christians that's really common?
Not so much why you left. I think you've nailed them. That pretty much summarizes them. Um, in some way, shape, or form, I can think of anything that would be said to fall into one of those categories. That seems pretty good. I do get comments from Christians now that I'm an atheist saying things like, I don't understand why you're always trying to tell us to stop being Christian. Why are you always getting in our business? Why can't you just leave us alone? Blah, blah, blah. That frustrates me because number one, I'm not going around knocking on doors and like making people talk to me. I'm on a show. If you don't want to watch, don't watch. I post on my Facebook wall. You don't want to see it, don't come to my Facebook wall. So it irritates me when they say that. Whereas Christians will go door knocking and they will invite you to their church to do and have, make you a captive audience to the gospel message. They will take you to Christian Halloween parties to make sure that you get to hear the message. There's all kinds of that going on. So I don't. When they say that, I'm just like I'm weirded out by this. I'm like, I don't see what you're talking about. What do you mean leave you alone? Go away if you don't want to talk.
We discussed that one last week.
Yeah.
In depth.
We invite you to come on the show and talk to us. We would love that, especially if you're a person that is willing to have dialogue. Yep. We want that. We're inviting week after week. We're going in, we're going to throw out this invitation on a reg. And we will have you on the show. You just got to contact us and let us know. The contact information will be below. You know how to reach us. I'm Alan at unravelation.com. It's an easy way to do it. Just grab me, let me know, and we'll have you on the show because we would love to hear your defense of the existence of God. We would love to hear you explain to us if it's only based on faith, explain to us how we're supposed to have faith when we're not convinced that a God exists. Like, I would like to know this. So anyway, that invitation will stand permanently, but go ahead. What were you going to say there?
Oh, I was probably going to open a new subject, but I was just going to make the comment that these four responses they might be the four most common responses, but they're not the four most common reactions. There's a bit of a difference between a response that just pops into their head and a defense mechanism, because the other reactions that I get from people are these automatic psychological defense mechanisms, such as mockery, anger, something I call blocking, which is almost like them putting fingers in their ears, and there's a lot of other emotional reactions you get when you activate somebody's essentially their fight or flight system after you've essentially attacked their very identity, which is what this is to Christians. This is an identity, and we could talk about those at another time, but there are responses and there are reactions. And if you're an ex-Christian, you're coming out to current Christians, you're going to get one or the other.
Yep.
And they're both going to frustrate you.
Yep. Actually, there might be another response that I get, and I don't know if this falls into one of four categories, but it's, hey, listen to this one sermon.
Oh yeah.
It's the magic one that will suddenly, convince you to come back to Jesus.
Yeah.
So I've gotten that. I don't know if that
Christian propaganda.
Christian propaganda. Yeah. So I don't know, the re-evangelizing, let's try to win you back kind of thing. Maybe that would be a fifth response.
Or tell you need to come back to church or something.
Yeah.
The most common Christian propaganda that gets thrown in my face is Lee Strobel's The Case for Christ. Sometimes I get Frank Turek's I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, or Josh McDowell's huge book. But aside from that, it's hard to single anything out specifically, but they always have some kind of, if they've indulged in Christian apologetics propaganda, they've got something on tap to throw at you. But it's never anything that I haven't addressed before.
Right. Well, this was awesome as always. And if you're still with us, we appreciate you listening. Welcome to the redefinition of 30 minutes. We have redefined what 30 minutes looks like. So I guess from now on, it's 30-ish minutes is what we're targeting.
I mean, I got nothing else to do.
But this is great. And if you stuck with us, then obviously we're interesting enough to listen to for 49 minutes. Or 50 minutes here. So thank you for being a part of this. I want to encourage you to make sure you like, subscribe, to all those things you do on Facebook and social media and YouTube. We'd appreciate that. That helps us out a lot to grow the channel and help others hear what we're saying. So make sure you do that. Also, come on over and join us at Deconversion Nation on Facebook. You can find it, Deconversion Nation. The link will also be in the info. It's a great group for ex-Christians and also never Christians. But it's also we also invite Christians who are willing to have their faith challenged. It's a great place for you to come and ask questions where nobody else has to know you're there. Nobody else has to know you're questioning. Nobody else needs to know you're struggling with your faith, or even that you're willing to challenge your faith, even if you're not struggling. Well, we want you to come over there, and it gives you a chance to interact, ask questions, get some answers directly to your questions from other atheists and maybe even non-atheists, but those who have deconverted at least.
And you're also an admin on Life After Christianity Facebook group, so that one too.
I'm not an admin, but I'm a what do you call the other one?
Moderator.
Thank you. Yeah. Jen's the admin there. But yes, that's a great group. So that one, there's no Christians there. So if you're like afraid of Christians, you can go to that group. But I try to really control the environments at Deconversion Nation. You can post anything you want as a non-Christian. All the stuff you want to learn, help people grow, whatever, those kinds of things are all welcome. But we also allow for Christians to come and dialogue with us in that group. And I try to keep it controlled where it's not debates and things like that. So it's a safe environment. So we want identity to be concealed there, because we want to have people have a chance to be able to be honest with themselves and not fear other people that might chastise them, so to speak, or whatever. So that's that. And we appreciate you being here. And next week, then, faith, maybe. We'll see.
Well, you know what? We're always going to bring up faith.
Yeah, it's always going to be faith. But what do these
It could be anything, but faith will come into it somehow.
So that's going to be our carrot on stick. Every week will be faith next week. But eventually, we will get to a specific topic. But Elliot, as always, it's a pleasure. Really enjoy talking with you, man. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And I guess this is our show for now, and we're going to have a great time together. So until next time, everybody, remember, we don't flock around.